You must gather your party before venturing forth.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. My name is Josh Strife Hayes, and in this video series we will continue making our Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition character. In this video we'll be talking about ability scores. On your character sheet they are the 6 boxes on the left hand side going downwards. I'm going to explain what ability scores are, how to find out what your ability scores are, and where these are used in the game. So, let's explain what they are. The tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons is in effect 2 games. One is a game of stories, a game of emotions and narration. This is often played by the players. And one is a game of maths and numbers. This is often played by the Dungeon Master. The maths and numbers are used to help make decisions and to see what will happen in the game. Every character is defined by the maths behind the scenes. As a player, you won't need to worry too much about this, but as a Dungeon Master, you absolutely need to know what the numbers are to make the fair decisions. Each character has several numbers associated with them, but the most important, without a doubt, are your ability scores. The abilities are Strength, shortened to STR. Strength is how physically strong your character is, and will be used in the game whenever you are trying to overcome a physical test, whether that's lift a heavy object, swing a heavy weapon, draw back a heavy bow, compete in an exercise contest. Maybe you need to push a boulder uphill. If it's a physically demanding trait and requires toughness and muscles, then strength is the number that we will be using. High strength is important for barbarians to swing big weapons, any melee fighters to lift big shields or wear heavy armor. Even rangers who need to draw back heavy bows require some strength. Strength is not as important for characters who rely on magic or characters who rely on trickery. Strength is needed for physically tough characters. Dexterity, shortened to DEX. Dexterity is all about hand-eye coordination, being able to move and coordinate your body quickly. Dexterity would be important to a juggler, or a gymnast, or a ranger who needs to fire 2 pistol crossbows at the same time. Dexterity helps with your aim and your finesse with weapons, while swinging a huge great axe may require a great deal of strength. Using a thin foil or a small sharp dagger to quickly and easily get in under an enemy's armor, that would require a feat of dexterity. You will need dexterity if you are more about accuracy and subtlety and less about huge damage. Dexterity is important for thieves to make sure they can pick the locks quickly, or rangers who are aiming with a bow. Constitution. Your constitution is a measure of your health and wellness. High constitution means you could eat rotten food without getting sick. You could take damage to your body without being injured too much. Maybe you could almost break a bone or get a huge cut on your arm and not worry too much about it. A person with high constitution is hardy and tough. They can take a lot of punishment before they finally give in. Low constitution would mean you are weak and frail. It doesn't necessarily mean thin body mass. It means that you are not able to take on the challenges and survive them. High constitution is important for any character that will get involved with melee combat, or any character that needs to take physical damage, absorb it, and not die. For example, a barbarian or a knight. Constitution is not too important if your character will not be putting their body through rigorous physical tests. A mage or a wizard standing at the back of the group throwing in magic spells does not need to worry too much about constitution, because their constitution will not be tested too often. Intelligence. Intelligence is exactly that. It's how much you know. If you went to university, if you did a master's degree, if you have a PhD, if you are a doctor, you could be said to be highly intelligent. You would have all this knowledge. Intelligent is about being book smart. You know all the facts and you know all the figures. You can remember all of the information. An intelligent character would know a lot about a lot. However, they may not be able to apply it. That's wisdom. We'll talk about that next. But for now, an intelligent character would have a lot of information in their head. An intelligent character would be a wizard who has studied for years, a sage who has all of the local knowledge. Maybe a banker with all of the knowledge of the banking law would count as intelligence as well. If you're going to play an intelligent character, you need to be aware of everything around you and how it fits into that world. Wisdom. Wisdom often gets confused with intelligence, but it is quite different. If intelligence is knowing things, then wisdom is knowing how to apply them. Someone who has lived in the forest their entire life may not be very intelligent, but they would definitely be very wise. They know what to eat, they know what not to eat, they know which animals are aggressive and which animals aren't. They know when it's going to rain and when it's not going to rain. Wisdom is about being able to apply that knowledge. Someone who's remarkably intelligent but doesn't understand how things work can't do anything. An intelligent character may be able to tell you exactly how to build a ship because they have studied how to build a ship, and they are indeed intelligent. But a wise character would tell you not to start building a ship when it's about to start raining. They would tell you to have all of your tools laid out. They would tell you to only use the best craftsman, or to not work with that guy because that guy doesn't get the job done. Wisdom is knowledge that can only be gained through trial and error and can then be applied in real life situations. A wise character would be a sage with many years under their belt, or a paladin who has seen more than his fair share of atrocities. Charisma. Charisma is about how much people like you. It's about your exuberance, your personality, your ability to project, to present, to entertain, to enthrall, to have people care about you or about what you care about. A charismatic character is able to walk into a tavern and captivate everyone there. They are able to make sure people are looking at and listening to them. Now, a charismatic character does not necessarily have to be a good character. Many evil people, many horrible warlords were, at their worst, still very charismatic. And some of the best people in the world are dull, boring, and hard to listen to. Charisma is important if you are playing a bard, or maybe a cleric who wants to be liked by people. High charisma will increase your chance at bartering for better prices in shops or getting more information out of locals. Low charisma will mean people will not want to talk to you, associate with you, or spend any time near you. They are the 6 main abilities. The first 3 are all about physical traits. The second 3 are all about mental traits. If your character needs physical power, then strength, dexterity, and constitution will be important to them. If your character is all about mental aptitude, then intelligence, wisdom, and charisma will be where you need to put the points. But what are the points? How do we generate them? What is the scale on? Where do the numbers come from and where do they go to? Well, let me explain. Dungeons & Dragons works with what's called a D20 system. A D20 is a dice with 20 sides. The lowest roll on this dice is 1. The highest roll is 20. Which means 1 is normally the lowest and least successful and worst stat you could have, and 20 is the highest possible stat you could have, although stats can go above 20. Basically speaking, 1 strength would be a brand new baby human child. They are not very strong at all, they have no real muscle to them. 10 strength would be your average human mid-age, 20 to 30. They're able to do a few push-ups, they're able to lift some weight, they're able to pick a sword up and swing it round. 20 strength would be heroic. You would be someone who has trained your whole life, a bodybuilder, someone who is working out, someone who is always taking care of themselves. The numbers, however, can go above 20. 25 strength is when you get into legendary warlord status, and 30 strength would be approaching demigod. The numbers can go as high as your dungeon master wants them to. But for now, all you need to know: 1 is terrible, 10 is the average, and 20 is heroic. Let's generate some numbers and put them into your character sheet now. To generate your ability score for your character, you will need 4 d6. That's a dice with 6 sides. I would like you to roll all 4 of these dice, and then I would like you to remove the lowest roll. This is called roll 4, drop the lowest. So when I say to you, roll 4 d6 and drop the lowest, it means roll 4 6-sided dice, remove the lowest number. I would like you to do that 6 times. This will generate 6 numbers. For example, I roll 4 6-sided dice, and I roll a 3, a 4, a 5, and a 6. I remove the 3, as it is the lowest one, and I take the 4, 5, and 6. I add them together and get a total of 15. So the first number I have generated is 15. I will write that down. I will not add it to a specific ability yet, I will just record that number. I would like you to generate 6 numbers using this method. Do that now. Once you have these 6 numbers, you will notice the minimum you can have is 3, and the maximum you can have is 18. 3 would be rolling 1 on every dice all the time, and 18 will be rolling a 6, a 6, and another 6. If you've been lucky enough to generate an 18, well done. You're going to be able to make one stat exceptionally good to start off with. And if you've rolled anything below a 5, that is unfortunate. But as we will see in future videos, it is the flaws that make a character interesting. Now we have generated these 6 numbers, we need to choose where you want to put them. You can put these 6 numbers in any order. You simply need to put 1 number into strength, 1 into dexterity, 1 into constitution, and then the remaining 3 into the other stats, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. But don't worry, because these aren't your final stats yet. They're going to get even better. For now, choose where you want the numbers to go. You do not have to follow any specific rule. Just because you chose to be a fighter doesn't mean you have to make strength your highest stat. It would be beneficial, but it's not a rule that you have to do that. If you have chosen to play a wizard, then high intelligence will help you. But if you want to make dexterity your highest stat, there's no one stopping you doing that. Put the numbers where you want them, where you believe they would go. And once you've done that, let's make them slightly better. So remember when we chose a race for your character? Well, every race gets certain bonuses to their ability scores. All these are listed in the player handbook in that specific races part. Humans get +1 to every ability. So whatever numbers you've generated, if you chose to play a human, you can increase them all by 1, then write them on your character sheet. You must add your racial bonus to your ability scores before you add them onto your character sheet. Reading through the player handbook, for example, I can see Dragonborns, if you chose to play a Dragonborn, will get an ability score increase of +2 to strength and +1 to charisma. Half-elves will get an ability score increase of +2 to charisma and 2 other ability scores of your choice by 1 each. Read the player handbook or look at the screen now and I will put all the ability score modifiers on the screen for you. Once you have done that, they are your final ability scores. So to recap one more time, generate 6 numbers by rolling 4d6 and dropping the lowest. Arrange these numbers how you would like them to look. Then add your racial ability score bonuses or modifiers, and then write those final numbers onto your character sheet. You now have your ability scores. Let's talk about what they mean. On your character sheet, you will notice the ability scores section have 2 areas for you to write any number for that score. For example, underneath strength, there will be a larger square box and then a small oval box if you are using the same character sheets that I am. It does not matter which one of these 2 places you write your ability score, because in the other place you will be writing the modifier. Many things in Dungeons & Dragons require a dice roll, often called a check. When someone says, make a difficulty check, it means roll a d20, or a dice with 20 sides. Your character will, however, not always need to use the result of the roll. You will be able to add or subtract modifiers. Modifiers are anything that change the result of a roll. Normally, a higher roll of the dice is in your favour, so it's always in your best interests to have high modifiers. Your ability scores will give you modifiers on many rolls. I'm going to tell you how they work now, and then talk about which numbered ability scores get you which modifiers. If this is all sounding a bit confusing and mathematical, that's okay. Don't worry about it. I will explain it in much more detail in a future video. For now, all you need to know is this. Your ability score is representative of a modifier. If your ability score is 1, which will be impossible right now, but can be drained in the game, you will write -5 next to it. For example, if during the game you at some point have 1 dexterity, you would get -5 to any dice roll that has anything to do with dexterity. This means you would lose a lot of the dice rolls based on dexterity. But you're not going to have 1 right now. That's impossible to have. If your ability score is 2 or 3, you will have -4. So if any of you are unlucky enough to have an ability score of 3, please write -4 in the box next to it. If any of you have 4 or 5 for an ability score, that would be a -3. Just so you know, there's an ability score and modifiers table in the player handbook. I am simply reading from the table up there in the corner. I'll go through the scores and the modifiers quickly. When you hear the ability score that you have, write down the modifier next to it. If you have an ability score of 6 or 7, please write -2. If you have 8 or 9, that's -1. If you have an ability of 10 or 11, that's actually 0. No modifier either way. That is average strength for the average person. Any ability score of 10 or 11 will have no effect on any dice rolls to do with that score. If you have 12 or 13 in an ability, you will gain a modifier of +1. 14 to 15 will give you +2. 16 to 17 will give you +3, and if you are lucky enough to have anyone in the 18 to 19 range, you'll gain +4. It's extremely unlikely any of you will have any abilities in the 20 to 21 range, but if you are one of the lucky few who did, by rolling an 18 with 3 dice and then adding a +2 racial modifier, you will get +5 to your modifier. This does go all the way up to +30, by the way, and can go even higher if your Dungeon Master allows it. For now, fill in your character sheet. You should have 6 ability scores on the left-hand side and the ability score modifier next to it. If I'm playing a game with you and you say, "Can I lift this heavy door open?" and I say, "Okay, make a strength check," and you roll a d20 or a 20-sided dice and you roll 10 on the d20, I'll then say, add your strength modifier. If this is 0, then your roll will be 10. If this is a positive modifier, you will get higher. If it's a negative modifier, you'll get lower. I'll explain much more about modifiers in the future, don't worry. But for now, you should know that you now have a character sheet with ability scores on the left-hand side and modifiers next to them. Excellent work so far. Thank you for joining me so far, and I hope your character creation is going well. In the next video, we'll be looking at armor class, initiative, and speed. But for now, thank you very much for your time. And remember, gather your party and venture forth.